Hey y'all, my name is Morgana, and welcome to the Sims 4 Ultimate Decades Challenge recap, I guess. This is a recap of years 13, 26, or 27, all the way through 1350. I'm going to be doing a recap like this at the end of every quarter. I almost said quarter century. I guess that is what that is, huh? Every quarter of a century. So the next one won't be until 1375, but we have a lot to go over. So in the previous episode, our dear family did not look anything like this, and it's all thanks to this lovely, beautiful, strong woman, Alice Smith. So if you recall, years 1300 through 1325 were very rough. And long story short, I have a recap video on that as well if you haven't been keeping up with the series. This is Alice's entire family, her grandparents, parents, and all of her siblings, all of whom died before or during the famine, leaving her orphaned and kind of having to create a legacy of her own. But that is a completely different story. So Alice Smith has married 3 different times. Her first husband, Nawaf Smith, who passed away right before the previous recap video, I think, or right after. I don't know, somewhere around that timeline, Nawaf passed away. Her second husband, Jacques, he also passed away at age 30. And her final husband recently passed away in his elderhood, Cornelius Humphreys. And with these 3 men, she has had a multitude of children. So before we go through what was happening story-wise, let's just go through these kids real quick. So she and Nawaf's first child was unfortunately stillborn. He died at birth. His name was William Smith. She named him William in honor of her father, and he joined him very quickly in the afterlife. Next up, she had her first surviving son with Nawaf, named Amir Smith. Now we'll get into Amir in a little bit, but Amir is not the bestest person. You know, I'd actually argue he's her worst child. Well, Nasir's fighting for that title. Nasir's fighting for it, but we'll get to them. Amir eventually married this woman named Mary, and together they have 4 children so far, though Mary is also pregnant. Humphrey, who is their heir. So our 4th generation heir is Humphrey. Leonard, who passed away during the plague, and their twins, Grogo and Sybil. Grogo actually got his mother's alien genes, and Sybil, although she didn't necessarily get the abilities, or she did get her mother's blue skin as her human skin. So we'll see how she's treated, and you know what hardships she may or may not face growing up with blue skin and not even able to do an alien disguise because she's more human than her brother is. But you know, genes. Next up, Alice and Nawaf had a second son named Stephen. He is nowhere near as rough around the edges as Amir. I'd actually argue he's her sweetest son. Ivo, I'll get to Ivo in a bit, but he's her sweetest son to me. He married a girl named Lynota, and they had 2 children, Jasper and Ralph. Lynota died during childbirth, giving birth to Ralph, and Jasper, no, she didn't. Lynota died as a young adult. She was sick. And Jasper and Ralph both died during the plague, leaving Stephen pretty much without a family. He kind of has his own thing going on right now, though. He is actually secretly in love with Amir's wife, Mary, who isn't really being taken care of as much as Amir should, or as much as Stephen believes she should be taken care of. He's currently searching for a next wife. He'll get married in the next episode, which I will see who he marries and whatever children he may get from that. He is not our heir, but you know. Next up are actually the twins, Nura and Nasir. I can't remember who came first. I'm just going to assume Nura because she's right here. Nura is not married, although you might see that she's got 2 little kids down here and potentially another one on the way. But she's going through a lot right now, and she's had twins, Lycia and Gilbert. Gilbert recently passed away from SIDS, and Lycia is surviving. And I'll go over what that means for Nura and why she's not exactly a happy camper about that. Her twin brother Nasir, he was such a sweet kid. He grew up to be the worst. I don't know. He married a woman named Thelka who kind of matches his energy and keeps him in line. And together they've had an army of daughters and one son. But Thelka is also pregnant right now, so I'd be surprised if he didn't have a daughter this time around, but we'll see. But they had Petronilla, Blanche, Elena, Walter, and Joan. Petronilla passed away right when she was turning into a toddler. She was sick. Blanche also passed away right when she was turning into a toddler. Or no, she passed away from the famine, I mean. And well, she was about to be a toddler, but she passed away before she gets to that point. And they have 3 surviving children as of right now: Elena, Walter, and Joan. And then whatever child Thelka has. Next up, Nawaf passed away after Alice had the twins, or like right before Alice had the twins, somewhere around that time. So the twins didn't grow up with Nawaf. So their father figure growing up was actually, well, 2 other men actually. The first one was a man named Jacques, who was a local trader. He and Alice came across each other pretty frequently, but when Nawaf died, Alice was pretty much a single mother of 4 toddlers. Well, 2 toddlers and 2 infants. She couldn't do it alone, and she knew she needed, a man to work and provide and keep the money and everything. So she quickly married the local trader, Jacques. She told herself she wasn't going to fall in love with him, but they did. He fell first because everyone always falls for Alice first. But that was that. And together they only had 1 child. They had, wow, thank you. Together they only had 1 child. They had this beautiful girl named Marjorie. Unfortunately, Jacques died at age 30. Marjorie was a toddler. Marjorie was young. Marjorie was very young when Jacques died, so she doesn't really remember him much, but she takes after him quite a bit. Marjorie recently turned into a teenager and became of age to wed, and she chose this dashing young man named Mahe Jones. If you're following along with the series, I know a lot of us wanted Mahe to be Malachi instead, and if something happens to Mahe, we'll see, but man, Malachi was fine. But together, they had 1 child so far, Evelina Jones. Marjorie is pregnant right now, so we'll see what she has again. Next up is Cornelius died. So, sorry, Jacques died. Cornelius did die. But next up, after Jacques died, Alice got married to this man named Cornelius, who was a pretty well-off blacksmith. He and Alice originally just had 1 child together named Nicola, who was kind of neglected a lot. So when she aged up into a child, age 6, on her birthday, she was fighting some inner struggles and unfortunately did not survive. So she passed away very, very young. It was very tragic. And after that, Cornelius and Alice just started having more kids. Well, she got pregnant twice. The first pregnancy was with this set of twins here, Jeffrey and Ivo, who were born amazing and healthy and everything. Jeffrey passed away as a toddler during the plague. And then right after she gave birth to these twins, she got pregnant again with Oliver, who died during childbirth. So I think it's kind of sad and also a little, I don't know, foreboding that her very first children were both sons who died during childbirth. Ivo is too young to get married or anything like that. He's a child. He's like a little younger than Humphrey. Like that's how much later she decided to have these 3 kids. So her youngest child is like younger than her eldest grandchild, if that makes sense. So yes. So a lot has happened in terms of events within this family. So let's start off with year 1337. I don't know the timeline, actually. I'm not going to do that. We're going to do this instead. Oh, man. So let's start off with the eldest child, Amir. Like I said before, Amir is Nawaf and Alice's oldest son. Well, eldest surviving son, since William didn't really get that chance. He was cool up until he turned into a child, and then we kind of started to see some dastardly things from him. And long story short, in year 1332, he actually killed his little sister Nura. So essentially Alice had a very close friend named Mary who took her in after her parents and family died and she was left orphaned after the famine. Mary, of course, was a witch, which was, of course, kept the secret from most people besides Mary's family and, of course, Alice, because Alice and Mary were almost like sisters. So Amir was visiting Mary's house one day and stumbled across a book of really dark ancient magic, even, a type of magic that even modern day spellcasters don't touch, He read that book, looked into it, and he saw something really interesting, which was a ritual where if you sacrificed a human in a specific type of way, then death would gift you something called a death flower. And with this flower, if you were to die an untimely or tragic death, if you keep that flower on you, death will take the flower instead of your soul. And Amir, by this point, had experienced a lot of death. His father died and he was a toddler, but he remembered it. When he aged up to age 6, he also had a near-death experience, and it was Cornelius who saved him? I can't remember. Somebody pleaded for him and it went through, but I can't remember who did it successfully. But he just had too many brushes with death, and as good of a mother as Alice is, she became super paranoid about her legacy and survival and everything, especially because she was her only surviving child. And she'd already lost one son, so seeing one survive, she pretty much drilled it into his head that he had to survive. He had to do what was best for the family. She refused for their family to be poor again. She grew up as a peasant, barely having food to eat, regardless of the famine. So she just drilled it into Amir to be this really good, stable head of the household, be educated, get money, survive, bring your bloodline, keep it going. And Amir kind of took that to heart. And, they have a very strict dynamic. Amir he does whatever it takes to be a good son in his mother's eyes, not necessarily a good brother. So he pretty much when his mother wasn't around, he was pretty mean to his younger siblings, especially Stephen, who he saw as being too soft or weak. But in his mother's eyes, he was an angel. So when Nura died, she didn't suspect him at all, even though Mary warned her that, something might be going on with Amir. Of course, Amir never pulled anything like that again. He just remained a bit mean-spirited to his siblings. Now, at some point, Alice had a childhood friend who she almost married, and in another life they're married, most likely. And his name was Robert. They were childhood friends and sweethearts, but, life is cruel and difficult, and so they never actually got a chance to be together. Not that I think either one of them regrets it. If anyone regrets it, it's probably Robert. But Robert, at the time, if they were to marry and they both were peasants and they didn't go through the things they went through in their life to, uphold their status and everything, their bloodlines might not have survived. Robert eventually went on to marry and have children with the woman, an alien woman. And that was a little bit before Alice met and married Nawaf, who was able to provide, give them a different social status and all that. So eventually, Robert came back and he essentially told Alice that one of the reasons that his family has been surviving so long when a lot of the other bloodlines have died out is because something is happening within Henford on Bagley where human families are just not making the cut. Not to say that werewolf families and other cults are not having their own issues, but they don't die out nearly as much as the human families. He was saying that he thinks the only reason he's outlived his siblings and he's outlived just about everyone in his life as well. He said his life didn't actually start to get better and they felt more protected until his stepmother came around, who was a vampire. And then things went down south when he married a human woman, but they divorced, and then he married his current alien wife, or he's dead, so, current to him, I guess. his alien wife and had children with her, and then he never experienced those specific types of hardships again. So he told Alice, I know you're doing well for yourself. I know you have these children and everything, but in case something were to happen, I believe you have Mary's protection. He somehow found out that Mary was a spellcaster. He was like, until you have an occult within your bloodline, your family will probably suffer. So the two of them made an arrangement where Amir, who is Alice's eldest child, would marry Robert's youngest child, Mary, who actually is an alien. She has an alien disguise, but she, prefers her human form for her safety and the safety of her family. And together they had Humphrey, Leonard, Groggle, and Sybil so far. Now, Amir and Mary are an interesting couple because, well, Amir, he's not terrible, but he's also not good for Mary. Mary, by this point, has just become complacent and is just kind of realized this is where her life will be from now on. She's going to be trapped in this loveless marriage in this house with people who are going to take Amir's side no matter what, but at least she has her children. So out of all of the kids, she's had the highest rate of survival in terms of their children. It's because she's in a cult. Is there something going on within the village where cults are surviving more than humans? Maybe, maybe not. But as far as I'm aware, she and Amir have the best survival rate of everybody. Well, not Amir individually. Amir has terrible survivor's luck, but I think that's because Alice's survivor's luck is so good. Alice never really has a problem surviving things except for that one time, but the people around her do not have such luck, unfortunately. So these two are still married, although Mary has kind of sort of started emotionally drifting toward Stephen recently. So we'll see where that goes or if anything comes of it. They could simply just be friends. Mary doesn't really have anyone to confide in. So we'll see. Humphrey's too young for anything much to be happening, though he does turn into a teenager soon. So Amir will most likely start training him in swordsmanship and will most likely expect him to lead the life of a knight, just as he did and as his father before him. But I don't know if Humphrey will want that or if it suits him, but we'll see. And the twins are, too young to even worry about that. They can barely walk down the stairs, so it's fine. Next up, we have their second born son, Stephen. Stephen was always a soft-hearted boy. Always soft-hearted boy. He was always very, I don't want to say emotional, so I'll say empathetic. He was nowhere near as stone-hearted as Amir was. If he was sad, he would feel that sadness for twice as long as anyone around him, whereas Amir would feel nothing at all. And he was just a sensitive boy. Unlike his brother, he never really took after the whole macho becoming a knife route like his father had. Instead, he actually became inspired a lot by Jacques, who actually was a diplomat. So he kind of followed in his he was not a diplomat, he was a traitor. But Stephen kind of went into the diplomatic route a little bit. So he does very low-level local politics and things like that. And I think it suits him best. I don't see him as the type to be carrying around I almost said a knife, but I mean a sword. What is a sword but a very large knife, But no. Eventually, unlike Amir, he actually was able to marry for love. All of his siblings are able to marry for love. Amir was the only one who had an arranged marriage, so sucks to be heir, I guess. Stephen married this woman named Lynota, and they had 2 children, Jasper and Ralph. He and Lynota got along pretty well, actually. It was a pretty amicable marriage. It was within that marriage where he realized 2 things. Well, both of them realized a lot. Lynota realized, well, she might not just like men. And she actually kind of had her eyes, she didn't have a crush on Mary, but her eyes wandered to Mary quite a bit. And it was around this time Stephen realized not only does he actually really have a crush on Mary and love her, but he's also polyamorous. So when Lynota came to him and was like, I have eyes for Mary, they both realized that as much love as they have for each other, they wouldn't mind, other people being involved as long as the situation is respectful and they all are aware of what's happening. So, thus, they became a secretly polyamorous couple, polyamorous and bisexual from Light Note. I don't know. I don't know what Light Note's actual sexuality was. He never really got a chance to explore it. And they kind of started slowly creeping in on Mary to try to lure her in further. At first, Mary really denied Stephen's advances, not because she finds him unattractive or anything like that, but because, well, it's inappropriate. That's her husband's brother. That's her husband's brother. She has children already. It's, you know, if something were to happen and they get caught, it'd be terrible. And it's mostly fear related than anything. And she's trying to hold on to what little respect for Amir she has. Because as bad as emotionally unavailable as he is a great father to their children so far. I don't know how he's going to treat Cybele or any of their other kids, to be honest, but he's a great father so far. He's a great son to Alice. He's an okay brother to everyone except for, I don't know, Stephen, I guess. But she couldn't, I don't know, she wasn't really thinking about herself and her wants or her needs. She was thinking about others, which is fair. Eventually, Lynota passed away. What did she pass away of? Illness. Ceased. That's not a word. She passed away from illness, at age 20. That doesn't seem right. Oh yeah, she was aging to a young adult. That's right. She passed away from a random illness a little while after giving birth to her son, Ralph. And then Stephen was left as a single father for a bit of his elder son, Jasper and Ralph. Jasper was the cutest child in the family. I kid you not. I'm legitimately upset that one, he died, and two, I didn't save the household. So I actually can't get him back. I can't get any of these people back. I don't want to fill up my gallery saving up, you know, every single household member, especially because they are birthed and die so often. Whatever. That's an excuse I'm using, but it's an excuse I'm going to stick with. So he was a single father for a bit, focusing on working, taking care of the boys and all that. But unfortunately, when the plague hit, although he himself was actually spared from it, I held a vote and you all voted to spare Stephen, Nura, and Mary. Wait, was it Stephen? I think it was those three. But unfortunately, Jasper and Ralph both succumbed to the plague and died, leaving Stephen completely alone, essentially, which is really sad. He's gotten a bit better now, but he was struggling for a very long time. So we'll see what happens with Stephen, especially now that Mary and Stephen have both lost children in the plague. Leonard also died in the plague. I feel like I did not make that clear. They've kind of emotionally started relying on each other because Stephen doesn't really have anyone. The siblings he was close to actually don't even live within the village, and he doesn't feel like he can go to his mom for certain things because Alice loves all of her children, but they can all tell that she treats Amir a little differently. And it's not because she favors him, but I think she just has all these expectations on him. But from the eyes of the other children, it's favoritism. And you know, it could be just plain old favoritism as well. But I think it's less favoritism and more that she is keeping him on a tighter leash than the others. The others have the freedom to do what they want, live their own lives, who they, you know, marry who they want, do what they want with their families. But Amir, as long as Alice is alive, he, you know, she doesn't keep him under her thumb, but he has to live up to her expectations, or at least before her, you know, in her eyes, in her face. So Mary and Stephen have kind of started coming to each other for emotional support recently. Will that go anywhere? Who knows? But as of right now, that is the situation. Next up, the twins, starting with Nura. So Nura, she was a very sweet and somewhat quiet child. She was unfortunately the victim of Amir's goals, essentially. Amir killed Nura in order to gain the Death Flower. Once again, not that Nura knows, even in death she didn't know. She was brought back by Mary, who took her ghost to a magic wishing well. And although she, as a child, a ghost child, wished the well to bring her back to life, the well denied her for whatever reason. But the well did grant Mary the knowledge of how to perform a spell that brings Nura back to life, though Mary could only use it once, and she used it on Nura, so that is how Nura is alive and well today. Nura grew up, she turned into a teenager, and that's where things kind of got a bit more complicated for her. Before, she was just going about life, hanging out with her brothers, making a couple of friends across the village, and one of the friends she made as a child was a girl named Christina. Christina was a bit older than her, of course, and was actually the daughter of one of the former lords of Henford-on-Bagley. And when she turned into a teenager, when Nura turned into a teenager, she realized that, well, she didn't want to get married, and she actually didn't want children. This family tree is, it says a lot about what happened to Nura, but she didn't want to get married and she didn't want to have children. And at first we thought it was because maybe she saw the way men and women in their society in this time period were treated and the expectations that would befall her and all of that good stuff. And so she just was not going to do it. A little bit more time passed and she was spending time with her friends, and she actually comes to realize, the reason she doesn't want to get married or have children is because, well, besides the fact that she's gray sexual and gray romantic, so she doesn't even really feel those types of emotions regularly anyways, or as very often, I suppose, she actually likes women. When she is attracted to people, she likes women, or specifically Lady Christina, her childhood friend. Around the time she became a teenager, Lady Christina was actually married off to a man and had to move to Willow Creek. And Christina and Nura were actually close friends at this point. So Christina wrote to Nura and asked her if she'd be willing to, or, would want to move to Willow Creek and move in with Christina and work as a nanny. So whatever children Christina had, Nura could nanny, and then, Christina would also have a friend nearby. Especially because I'm pretty sure she knew that Nura had no plans on being wed or being married or anything like that. And it's not like she had to stay back and care for her mother because, well, she's got like 1 million siblings and Amir was here. And Amir had Mary and there were plenty of other people around. And Nasir was still in the house at that time as well. So Nura packed up, hearts in her eyes, and headed to Willow Creek to move in with Lady Christina. Christina and Nura, spent a lot of time together. Christina at this point only had one child, a little girl named Cecilia. Nura took care of her and raised her, but it was pretty clear that those two were really just there for each other. And while it took a while, it took years, it took almost a decade for Christina's husband, Armando, to realize that, what these two had going on was wasn't as innocent as he may think. So about a few years before this recap, somewhere in the early 1340s, Christina revealed to Nura that she thinks she has a crush on her. Nura revealed that she's actually been in love with her for all this time, and even if she didn't think that Christina's love would be reciprocated, she was fine, content living out her days, just being close to her. And the two from then on have started a secret relationship behind the back of Christina's husband, and the rest was history. He found out pretty recently as well. They lost Cecilia to the plague, and he kind of realized after all this time, Christina had not given him another child. He doesn't even have an heir, and he had caught her and Nura, not necessarily in bed, but had caught them being very inappropriate and caught on to what type of relationship they had. He confronted Christina, and Christina kind of tried to wiggle her way out of it, but eventually she admitted that she was in love with Nura and that they had a relationship. But she did not reveal how long it had been going on or anything like that, but I guess it wasn't even necessary. So Christina and Armando eventually came to a deal, essentially. Christina talked about how difficult, having children and everything was, and pretty much told Armando, hey, Nura has a lot of siblings, and only she and like 2 other of her siblings are girls. Her mother bore a lot of males. Their bloodline is completely secure. If anyone's going to bear you a son, it's going to be Nura. Of course, we know modern day that's not at all how that works, but they didn't know. So he said, okay, cool. Christina told Nura the plan. Nura wasn't jazzed about having a child, but if doing something as simple, quote unquote, as giving birth, kept her with her love, she'd do it. If all she had to do was give this man a boy, she'd give him as many as she possibly could. So she and Armando had spent a night together. Wasn't very passionate or anything, but it got the job done. And she eventually gave birth to twins, Lycia and Gilbert. They were born pretty healthy as newborns, but unfortunately Gilbert passed away suddenly from SIDS, and she's left with Christina, which once again leaves Armando without a male heir, and 2 daughters, since Christina gave birth to another girl, which is why Armando was also so upset. So 3 daughters in total. 1 is deceased, and Christina is pregnant right now, so we'll see what she has. If it's a girl, then Nura has 1 more chance to birth a son for Armando, a surviving son to take over for him. So I don't know what Nura is going to do. She's not pregnant quite yet, but she has a lot of thinking to do and a lot of opportunities to try to get out of this situation. Some good, some bad, but if something happens and Armando is finally fed up at the fact that he does not have this heir, he is going to reveal to the public about Nura and Christina's relationship. And, at best, they're going to get jail time, and at worst, a fiery end. So this is not only for her safety and her livelihood, but also for Christina's, So they're trying to figure out a way to kind of get out of this situation while still being together. So for right now, she's a mother of 1 named Lycia, but the one that she needed alive was Gilbert. She's not necessarily she's not a loving mother at all. She just had a kid because she needed to, but we'll see how Lycia grows up, and if Nura has to get pregnant one more time, what happens to that child. Nasir's situation is a lot less dramatic than his twin sisters, fortunately. Nasir was such a sweet child, and then he grew up into a teenager and then just became the worst. But around the time he grew up was around the time Amir actually came back from war. And Nasir got it in his head about, these knights, all these men, and being macho, and I don't know, he got this weird idea of what it means to be a man and be a knight. And that just completely warped his personality. So by the time he was a teenager, he was actually the worst. Whereas Amir is, mean and private and just stone-hearted, and he does not feel, like love and compassion for those around him, even his siblings. I'd argue he's actually most compassionate towards his children. Nasir just started being mean to their face, even in front of their mother. But Alice was being a bit strange with the way she was treating Nasir. When Nasir was mean to his siblings, she didn't say anything, but when his siblings talked back or defended themselves, or specifically Marjorie, she always kind of took Nasir's side and would reprimand the child that defended themselves. Nura would try to defend Marjorie as much as she could, but eventually she moved out. So Nasir was just wreaking havoc on Mary and Marjorie, just like tag teaming both of them with rudeness and meanness. Eventually, he married a woman named Thelka. Thelka isn't mean or anything like that, but she certainly is not the type of woman to sit down and just take someone's shit. That's for sure. Even Nasir's. He is quite literally the only other person besides his mother and Amir, his elder brother, that he has shown deep respect for. He does not treat Thelka. He doesn't even try to treat Thelka the way Marjorie and Nura treat her, or the way he treated his sisters, I mean. With Thelka, he keeps his mouth shut. He knows when and when to not speak. Thelka keeps him in line. So I'm a Thelka stan because Nasir was getting on my nerves. He was second worst son, second worst kid for sure. Now together, Nasir and Thelka had 5 children. 1, 2, 3, 5. I can count. They had 5 children. Petronilla. These 2 are twins. I meant to put these 2 as twins. They got married, and Nasir actually moved to Willow Creek, and just so happens to live directly across the street from Nura. Though they don't really see each other often, they've just grown apart over these years. The things that are important to them don't really include each other anymore. It used to. Nasir was like, Nura couldn't be out of Nasir's sight, especially when she came back to life. But once they turned into teenagers, it's like they just blocked each other out completely. So now, even though they live directly across the street from one another, they're not close at all. They don't talk. You know, Nura's never really taken the time to come visit him or his wife or any of their children. And he just recently found out she even had a kid. And like, it's a lot. But Nasir and Thelka had one child, beautiful, beautiful girl named Petronilla, who unfortunately passed away from... Yeah, she passed away right before the plague. She got bit by a rat, got a disease, and died. That's... As you can see, my storytelling is top tier. Next up, they had another child named Blanche. Petronilla actually died the day Blanche was born, so it was really sad. But they had Blanche, and Blanche, unfortunately, somewhat similar to Petronilla, passed away from an illness, but specifically the Black Plague. She passed away not much after Petronilla from the plague. Next up, they had a child named Elena, who did not pass away from the plague. Was she born during the plague? I actually don't know. But they have their eldest child right now is Elena, who is still alive, and she is a toddler, so we'll see. They have yet to have a child age up past toddlerhood. Nasir can have like 10 kids. Well, sorry, he can have 10 pregnancies. So he's only 4 pregnancies in. He's got a lot of chances. And Thulka's pregnant right now, so he's 5 pregnancies in actually. She's a toddler, so she doesn't have anything going on for her, but she's super adorable. She's so cute. Next up are the twins that they just recently had. His first ever boy. He is the only one of He is the only one of Alice's sons to have a boy. He was actually first to have a boy. Walter was born before Gilbert was. Yeah. So his first ever boy, he's alive for now. And then this boy, of course, came along with a twin, a girl named Joan. One thing Nasir's going to do is have a girl. Amir's first girl wasn't till Cybele, but that was a few pregnancies in and years apart, as you can see. There was going to be a child here in the middle, but before Grago and Cybele, but Mary actually had a miscarriage. So I don't know what the gender of that child was or anything like that, because it's the 13 somethings. So I will never know. But there would have been a 5th child or more if she had multiples, but there is a missing child between Leonard and Grago and Cybele. But yeah, so these are the first set of surviving twins before the alien twins, I suppose. And, well, not the first set of this generation. And that's about it. Nasir and Nura only recently started speaking because Nura went to Nasir and pretty much told him the entire situation that had been happening just across the street. How she liked women and specifically was in love with Christina, and they'd been having this affair for all these years, and she just gave birth to a daughter, but her son just died. Well, she gave birth to twins, and her twin boy just died. Something that Nasir probably could relate to, because Nasir's lost children as well, and he himself just had twins, and he himself is a twin. So she kind of asked Nasir if something were to happen to him, if something were to happen to her and she ended up dead or in prison or anything, could he please take in her child? You know, she might not care much for that child, but she doesn't want him or her left with, you know, Armando, because Armando might just be petty and then put her children in like an orphanage or something. And Nasir essentially just got mad at her. He called her stupid. He was like, how could you do this? Did you think any of this through? Why would you even blah, 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 blah. And he eventually came back and was like, no, for my safety and the safety of my families, I cannot take in your child. Um, if anyone finds out that anyone finds out that we're related like this, they're going to think that I knew and supported it and all this. So he was like, I refuse. But she actually managed to contact Stephen and write him a letter, and he agreed that if something were to happen to Nura, he would take in her children. Though he was surprised to see that she even had children to begin with, but he's also kind of keeping that secret from their mother as well. Just because if things work out, then, there's no need to out Nura, So that's how that's going. So Nasir, he's being a bit selfish. He's completely cut himself off from most of the family, including he writes to his mother occasionally, but for right now, it's just him in his own little world with his children. So he's an interesting person. Now, I went to a child that does not come from Nawaf. This is Marjorie Craftman Jones. She is the child of Jacques Craftman, and actually the only child that Alice and Jacques had together. When did her dad die? I think she was a toddler when her dad died. So she was mostly raised by Cornelius, actually. She was mostly raised by Cornelius, and I think it's interesting that all the children, most of them were not raised by their actual father because they kept dying. So, she kind of grew up as a very serious but intelligent woman. I don't know how to explain her. She's pretty multidimensional. She's very serious and very intelligent. She's not afraid to stand up for herself. She was the only one who would argue back with Nawaf when Nawaf would try to terrorize her as a child. And she would become a bit annoyed and sad at her mother because she felt that Alice didn't care much for her and was always constantly taking Nasir's side. Because Nasir was just being terrible and Nasir was just being the worst. Eventually, she turned into a teenager and she knew that one of her goals in life was to get married and have children of her own. She wanted to be a better mother than Alice, and she wanted to kind of get as far away from the family as possible. She still keeps in touch pretty often, though, especially with her siblings when she can. But yeah, as bad as Amir is, by the time he aged up into an adult was around the time Marjorie was growing up. So he kind of left his mean streak behind. So he's not needlessly being mean to Marjorie or any of the younger ones. They're just there. He helps out with them sometimes, like changing a diaper, but he doesn't actually spend time with them. So she doesn't really have much of an opinion of Amir because Amir doesn't really care much about her. He got everything he needed, right? His goal was to survive, get married, and have children, and that's where he is. He doesn't need to do anything else, I suppose. So after a while of trying to figure out who she was and wasn't going to marry, she eventually settled for a teenage boy named Mahe. Mahe is from Sulani. His job is, he's a beast master, so he breeds wolves and sells them off and all that. They moved together to Wittenberg, so she's alone in a different village, a much bigger village as well. And so far, they've had one child, a little girl named Avelina, who is super adorable. I can't get over how cute she is. And she's also currently pregnant, so we'll see. Actually, everybody's pregnant. Marjorie's pregnant, Thilka's pregnant, and so is Mary. Nora's gonna get pregnant again, but okay, fine. She's gonna get pregnant again, but she's not pregnant right now. So we'll see what other child she has and what becomes of her and that child. But that's about it. As of leaving the household, she's been so peaceful and happy living out in the countryside with Mahe, Avelina, and their multiple hunting wolves. I don't know. Now, Cornelius and Alice had only one child for a very, very long time, and that child was a little girl named Nicola. She was such a cute little toddler. She was fun-loving, she was energetic, and she liked to talk and spend time with people. But around the time she was born, it kind of seemed like nobody really had time for her. Cornelius would spend the most time with her, but a lot of the time he was at work and doing blacksmithing things. And Alice was preoccupied with the older children, and the older children were preoccupied with, having their own children and getting married and all that. So she didn't really have anyone around for her to hang out with or anything like that for a long time. And when she got older, she turned around 6 and just kind of succumbed to that sadness, unfortunately, which, none of the family really talk about. As far as they're aware, she died suddenly, but she had a lot of sadness inside. She was pretty emotionally neglected. It was kind of bad. She had everything else she could wish for. She had toys, but she never really had any attention and didn't really have a lot of fun. The birds kept her company, which is something Alice would know about, but I guess Alice figured she has siblings, but that wasn't really enough. They weren't really there. So unfortunately, Nicola passed away. She was one of the deaths I was most sad about. Nicola and Jasper and Petronella are the 3 child deaths I was most sad about in this quarter group of years. But years and years later, Cornelius and Alice decided to have more children. Or by Cornelius and Alice, I mean specifically Alice. I think with this death and then seeing her first few grandchildren come in, Humphrey was born a little after Nicola was. She just had the worst baby fever and she just wanted child after child after child. But she only got pregnant twice. She wants to get pregnant again, but she's done. She's done. Her uterus is being locked up. She's done. So Cornelius and her actually had a set of twin boys, Jeffrey and Iva. They were fine. Iva is very young. He's a little younger than Humphreys, but they get along well. Sorry, Humphrey, not Humphreys. The last name, the Humphrey last name and Humphrey the person confuses me sometimes. But he had a fraternal twin named Jeffrey. The dark skin and light skin twins is definitely giving me Pair of Kings, but I like it. I loved Pair of Kings before they became triplets, pair of triplets, apparently. But Jeffrey passed away suddenly during the plague. They're both very fun-loving people. Ivo is also a pretty fun-loving kid. He mostly hangs around Humphrey right now. Those two are pretty close. They treat each other almost like brothers, more than more than nephew and nephew and uncle. Ivo is technically Humphrey's uncle. But he's about the same age as not Jasper. It's the same age as Leonard, who passed away. So they kind of see each other more like brothers or even cousins, more than the traditional uncle-nephew dynamic. And last but not least, Alice had given birth to her last child named Oliver, who unfortunately passed away during childbirth, which also took Alice's life. Alice passed away as well. Her heart stopped when she was giving birth to her child. Cornelius was actually the one to plead to death for Alice, and death obliged. But unfortunately, all of the heartbreak and losing a lot of his kids and almost losing his wife. He was an elder by this point. This picture's not accurate. He was an elder, and his heart just pretty much couldn't take it, and he passed away the morning after, unfortunately. But Alice is alive. He left behind the twins, but one twin joined him soon after, and now his only surviving child is Ivo, which is really sad. So this is what the current family tree looks like. I separated it this far because, well, Alice is almost like a matriarch. Well, she is a matriarch, but this family tree was getting too mixed in with this family tree, especially with her multitude of husbands. The 3 of them. But yeah, they're just getting larger and larger. Stephen has only had 2 children or 2 pregnancies. He gets 7, so he gets 5 more. So this will be even larger, most likely. Amir's going to have as many as it takes for someone to survive. He might stop soon-ish, especially if Humphrey lives to be a teenager and is able to marry and have his own children and get Gen 5 started. Is that 5? Wait, ignore these 2. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, if Humphrey survives to his teenage years and he's technically the heir, then Gen 5 will get started and Amir doesn't need to have like 10 kids like Alice did. Alice also didn't need to stop at 10 kids, to be honest. She could have stopped. She could have stopped after the 4, after Nawaf's kids, but she was just paranoid. So yes, honestly, I am most excited. So here's the thing. I'm going to break down these quarter recaps into different sections. That entire first section is just going to be the recap section. This next section is going to be the sections that I'm most excited for. So what I'm hoping to see, you might be like, Morgan, it's your game. You know what's happening. I actually don't. I let my Sims do their own thing, which is why Nura ended up where she's at, because that was not my original plan for her at all. My plan was for her to live peacefully with Christina, and Christina never knowing that Nura has a crush on her, but then Christina outed herself. I didn't do that. And then they woohooed that same day. So clearly I don't have any control. But my storylines that I'm really interested in seeing, I'm interested in seeing where Mary and Stephen go from here. Whether or not, even if it's just something as simple as like a deep friendship and an understanding of how life with Amir can be hard, I will take that. I'm interested in see how Sybil grows up and what her relationship with her siblings, especially her twin brother, who actually is an alien, but specifically with Amir and maybe even Alice and the villagers around her, and if she gets married and all that, blah, blah, blah. I'm really interested in seeing where she goes. I hate to say it, but I think the least interesting person in the family tree right now is actually Humphrey. Either Humphrey or like Nasir's kids. Like even Evelina, I'm actually kind of interested in, but I think Humphrey, Ivo, and Nasir's kids, I'm not really excited for. At least not right now. Humphrey ages up into a teenager soon, so maybe once he's a teen, we can kind of get into it. So Humphrey's deal is that he actually has the talentless trait. So while Amir loves him and, his grandmother loves him and, he's surrounded by love and support, he doesn't really, I don't think he has the skills to be heir. I don't think he should take over the family, but according to the rules, the eldest son takes over. I can't say that I think that Grago or anybody else would be a better fit to be heir because he is literally 2 years old. But Humphrey, I don't know. I really don't know. I like that he's more empathetic than his father. So, because once Alice passes away, who knows how Amir is going to run the family or, what they're all going to be subject to. But I don't know. I'm really just not excited for Humphrey to be heir. Maybe he'll surprise me as he gets older, but I don't know. I just really don't care too much about him right now. Stephen, I'm really interested in seeing him get married. He's getting married in the next episode. I didn't record that episode too, so I don't know who he's getting married to yet. And once again, seeing his relationship with Mary and what comes of that. It could just be a friendship. It could be more. I don't know if I want it to be more. I feel like I'm scared of Amir. Like if he at age like 10 was willing to kill off his like 3-year-old sister, or like his 6-year-old sister, I don't think he's above murder as an adult who can wield a sword. You know what I mean? I just, I don't know. I wouldn't touch it, but that's up to them. Nura, very interested in, because her life is in such despair right now. It can go any direction. It could go good. It could go bad. It's all reliant on whether or not she has a son and if that son survives. You know what I mean? So I'm interested in seeing what happens with her because it can end very badly. It can end very badly. Nasir, honestly, the most interesting thing about Nasir, I want to see just how many daughters he has. I'm not kidding. He has only had daughters besides Walter. And I'm surprised Walter is born. I actually thought Walter was going to die. I hate to say it. I was like, oh, only Joan's going to survive. Like, that's how little faith I have in Nasir having boys at this point. Marjorie's chilling. I don't really expect or want anything from her at this point. I want her to have more kids because Evelina's gorgeous and Mahe is gorgeous and Marjorie is gorgeous. So I want to see just how gorgeous the other children are as well. And Ivo, I don't have any hopes or expectations for Ivo at all, actually. Yeah, he can chill. He's the most free of the Smith kids, of the Smiths. Well, he's a Humphreys. Now, on to a different section. I was thinking there are a lot of storylines that never came to fruition that you all do not know about. So at the end of each corner, I think it'd be really fun for me to kind of quickly go over storylines that could have been. So I didn't do that for the last one. So let's head over to this family tree just to quickly recap. So for William, if y'all recall, he was an orphan. I was going to have a brother figure come to town and, well, come back to the village. And this brother figure was going to be not necessarily someone educated or a knight or anything like that, but he was going to be pretty proficient in a trade and offer to teach William's heir, who at this point was actually Simon, because Simon was the oldest boy, even though at the time I wanted it to be Pasco. But he was going to offer to teach William's eldest son how to do this trade so that they didn't have to solely rely on farming to make money. So then Simon, they're still going to be peasants most likely, but you know, they were going to make a bit more money. I was also going to, I don't think I was going to cure Matilda's curse, but I was going to find a way for, if not Mary, then a different spellcaster to let Matilda know that the reason she'd been having all these fires and stuff was because of a curse. So I just wanted to introduce the idea to the bloodline that curses exist and to be wary of witches. You know? So I don't know if I was specifically going to introduce, I was on the fence about introducing like any more lineage from Beatrice or anything like that, but I don't know. But that was the plan. I was going to have those two things happen. I didn't plan anything for their kids because they were all too young when they died and I didn't get a feel for their personalities. Nawaf, as y'all recall, Nawaf, well, actually, I don't know if I actually specifically stated this because I was thinking about it. But as you know, Nawaf came from a pretty prominent house and became a knight. Nawaf was actually from a low-level noble house. You know, not necessarily like meeting with the king nobility, but, you know, with the right marriage arrangement could be like a baron or even like a duke or something like that. That's how prominent his family was. I was going to have his parents, younger brother, and sister kind of find him and see what he's been up to. It wasn't going to be necessarily good and it wasn't going to be necessarily bad. It would depend on the family members I made for him. But considering I didn't make them yet, and so I didn't get a chance to randomize their personality traits and see how it would click with Nawaf's, I don't know what would have came from that, but just know that technically speaking, Nawaf has parents out there. If we come across them, I'll point them out. I think some of them died during the plague, though. I'm not gonna lie. But yes, Nawaf technically has a family out there. So Amir and them also have cousins out there who they just never met. Nawaf just kind of excommunicated himself from his family because they arranged a marriage for him with someone he did not love at all, and he would rather have been a knight risking his life on the battlefield than to go into a loveless marriage. And then he eventually found love with Alice. So it was going to be you married a peasant woman and blah, blah, and all that. So I didn't have anything planned for Jacques, nothing for Cornelius. Anything for these people? Okay. So I don't know. I don't know how to explain that for Amir. I didn't necessarily have plans, but I didn't expect him to be this mean. So whatever plans I did have were going to be like really cute and romantic. And then he turned into he's kind of a dickhead. So, you know, those cute romantic plans did not happen. But Mary and Amir were actually going to be like head over heels in love with each other. But, you know, I don't think Amir's capable of feeling love. So clearly that didn't happen. Nothing for Stephen. Nura, like I said before, she wasn't even supposed to have kids. She was just going to wordlessly die pining after a married woman. I'm kind of glad that's not what happened though. But it is all thanks to Christina because Nura was too afraid to reveal her true feelings to Christina because she had a lot more on the line. Nasir, actually, I was not planning on Nasir being mean. He randomized that trait, which is a big surprise to me because he was a big softy as a child. But I can't say I didn't plan on him getting married or anything like this, but I didn't plan on Nasir and Nura. The fact that they moved in across the street from each other was actually pure coincidence. I legitimately didn't plan that actually. But they were actually supposed to remain much, much closer. If Nura hadn't fallen in love with Christina, she was actually going to move in with Nasir and whoever Nasir married and be a nanny for them. So the twins were going to stay together. So that was it. Not much of a difference, but Nasir is the one who changed. Well, Nura also, they both changed because Nasir turned out to be terrible and Nura turned out to be a lesbian. So Marjorie, I'm gonna be completely honest. Marjorie surprised me because she was the child I was least excited to have. I know that sounds really bad. Like remember, this is before Jeffrey, Oliver, and Ivo were born, so it was just like Marjorie and then Nicola. I was so excited for Nicola. I was legitimately so excited for her to grow up, and I was not really excited for Marjorie. I was excited for Nura and I was excited for Nicola. But Marjorie surprised me, and she's actually like one of my favorite peaceful characters, and my character Sims to play because she's killing it. I don't know what else to say. But she surprised me, and I think that might be because my expectations were so low, and I should have never underestimated her. This is still Alice's child. I'll respect her. But yeah. I'm so excited, and I'm really most excited to see what type of children she has. Not to use her as a baby maker or anything like that, but that's the truth. I want her to have cute kids. She gets the least amount of pregnancies. The only other person who gets less pregnancies than her is Nura, but she only gets 3 pregnancies, so I'm hoping all 3 of them survive. And I kind of want all 3 to be girls, but having a handsome male to carry on his genetics just so my townies can have variety and all that would be helpful as well. Nicola died a bit too soon, but because I was so excited to play as her, I was expecting to make her kind of like the village heartthrob. Like all of the guys in the village and all the girls in the village, she was just going to be super popular. That was it. She was going to be super popular, and then I was going to go from there. But she was going to be like the socialite of the family. And I was thinking about really having, what's his name? Cornelius, her father, and everyone kind of work on grinding some more so that we'd actually have 10,000 simoleons to spare to hopefully marry her into a noble family. Like I had high plans for her. I wanted her to marry one of the local lords or one of the local lord's sons. The sons mostly died during the plague, so I guess it worked out. But I planned on having her marry either one of the local lord's sons or before Mary passed away, she and her second husband had a son together, and he was a beautiful, gorgeous son. And I wanted Nicola and Mary's youngest son to get together. And those are the top 2. Either she was going to marry the son of the lord, of one of the previous lords, or marry Mary's son, who would have also been a spellcaster, so would introduce another line of, what's it called? Another line of occult. Because we only have one, and they're the one doing the best. So maybe what Robert said had some weight to it. Because Stephen is not in a relationship with an occult, and he's lost everything. Nasir is not in a relationship with an occult, and he's lost so many children. Nura's not in a relationship with an occult, and she's suffering. And Marjorie's doing okay for now. Marjorie's chilling. But then, like, you know, Cornelius, I don't know what was going on with Cornelius's luck, but we'll get there. So yeah, that was my plan for Nicola. I didn't have anything planned for Jeffrey. I still don't have anything planned for Ivo, admittedly. He's really just living his life. Whatever happens, it'll be a surprise to you and me. And then Oliver, never really got the chance to exist, so I don't know. Now, Cornelius actually did have a teeny tiny plan planned out for him. And that was, I was going to try to figure out a way to explain why he had such good luck. Because Alice has really good survivor's luck, but Cornelius had really good talking to death luck. like Death reluctantly worked with Amir because Amir did like an ancient ritual and Death was just so surprised. He was like, all right, here's a flower. Don't do this again. Do it again. I'm not giving you one. But he gave him the death flower. And Cornelius, I was thinking a few different ideas. Now that he's dead, I'm not doing any of them, which is why I'm saying this now. But I was going to say either Death was like I was going to say maybe he was related to the Grim Reaper somehow. Like maybe his mother or someone, secretly had a child with the Grim Reaper. Or maybe something happened to him when he was a child and he just lost memory of it. And that's why Death listens to him when he pleads for somebody. I don't know. But I was going to give him some form of connection to Death, either through bloodline or through some form of obligation. And that would have been the reason why Death listens to Cornelius whenever he was pleading for someone to survive. But unfortunately, he passed away because he could have. I was going to have him plead for, what's this guy's name? Leonard. Because I forgot who pleaded for Leonard, but they didn't do a good job because Leonard died. So, or maybe I flipped a coin, which is the person in question who didn't do a good job. But yeah, that was it. I hope you all enjoyed the recap. And also, this is for way in the future, but the next quarter century recap we'll have is 1375. And then for when we get into the next century, being 1400, I might do two things. I might do, of course, like a quarter century recap just to, recap on 1376 through 1399. But I'm also thinking of doing like a long form cinematic-esque video going over literally everything we've done this entire century. And I think I might do that for the end of each century. But y'all let me know. Would you even be interested in that before I spend time doing it? Y'all let me know. I think it'd be fun though. It'd be almost like movie-esque with narration and everything. So you could just like play it in the background like a podcast. It'd be almost like a storybook, like a fairy tale. Going over everything that had happened. And it'll be like an animatic movie-ish situation. Machinima. Yeah, not animatic. I'm not drawing anything. Machinima. But with that all said and done, thank you all for joining and thank you all for following this journey. We're 50 years in, 50 more to go before we reach the next century. So I hope you all enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Share your thoughts and what you think is going to happen next. What were your favorite moments? Who your favorite Sims so far? Or who were your favorite Sim if they died? What do you think is going to happen? Who are you most excited to see, their story play out? Let me know. I'm excited to hear about it. Bye.